politique et leur contribution nécessaire au redressement économique.
Quand Lucien Bouchard leur demande de l'aider à relancer le Québec, les milieux d'affaires majoritairement lui répondent que son option fait problème.
Montréal et la région métropolitaine présentent un cas à part.
Des dossiers purement économiques, même difficiles, peuvent toujours se régler. Mais qu'advient-il du projet souverainiste? À quand le prochain référendum? Où s'en va le premier ministre?
Quelle stratégie va-t-il falloir adopter?
Depuis la commission Bélanger-Campeau, Lucien Bouchard et Claude Bélan ont tissé des liens. Quand Bélan parle, le premier ministre écoute. Le président du mouvement Desjardins est généralement identifié comme étant sympathique au camp souverainiste. Mais du haut...
16 mayors signed the official declaration.
Who are we? We are Canadians. We are united under one Canada, indivisible.
The mayors here felt that they had to send a message.
We want to be Pontiacers, we want to be Quebecers, and we want to be Canadians. That's what we're telling our Prime Minister.
4 mayors decided not to sign, which upset some of their constituents.
The people did want you to pass this resolution or this declaration. I don't understand why you didn't pass it.
Our council felt that we shouldn't pass it.
And that started a debate amongst the onlookers.
And there's all kinds of French who are voting no. It's not French against English, and we want to get that straight. There's no reason for that. We've been getting along with French all our life. Who started it?
You're going to see.
And outside the meeting room, the man who got the ball rolling was clear about what the declaration means.
They can have as many referendums if they want. It doesn't matter to us anymore because we're speaking as a territory.
Is this in effect partitioning?
You can call it what you may, but Quebec is going to make the first partition. We will make the second one.
The mayors here say they hope all the media attention will highlight the urgency of the matter and get the Quebec government and the federal politicians talking again. June Chua, CBC News, Campbell's Bay, Quebec.
Local representatives of the Ontario Public Service Employees Union met with...
Represent 20 communities in the Pontiac region that borders Ontario, northwest of Ottawa. They failed to reach unanimous agreement for a motion stating they want to remain in Canada even if Quebec separates. CTV's Donna Friesen reports.
The signs of federalism abound in this poor Quebec county that borders Ontario. Canadian flags fly in almost every yard. Many went up after the last referendum. The close result scared a lot of people here, like Jeanette Bertrand in the local pizzeria.
We don't want to be separated. We want to stay united.
People were complacent last time, she says. They can't afford to be anymore.
The future kind of hangs in the balance, I guess.
It does. Everybody's future right now does.
So they've turned to their local politicians.
All those in favor?
For weeks, the county's 20 mayors have been discussing how best to message that they don't want to go along if Quebec separates. They usually deal with roads and sewers. Now they're being asked to take a stand on the future of the country. Some wanted a formal vote, a resolution, but they didn't get one. Instead came a declaration.
A declaration which will affirm and secure our Canadian status as being part of one Canada, indivisible.
A declaration, not a formal resolution, not a vote. Still, they insist a strong message.
We'll get it to the people that is going to receive it, and that is Chrétien and Lucien Bouchard.
But it won't bear the signatures of all the mayors. 4 of the 20 did not support it.
I am not against the declaration, but I didn't figure it should be at this level.
At this level, politicians rely on provincial funding, and there was pressure not to bite the hand that feeds.
The repercussion of holding back on funds or grants for their municipalities?
Many other federalists in Quebec were watching the mayors of Pontiac, waiting to see how strongly they would speak. Many expected a formal vote on a resolution. The impact of this declaration is less clear. Donna Friesen, CTV News, Campbell's Bay, Quebec.
U.S. President Bill Clinton announced
as Pontiac County made a bold move in the name of national unity. Normally, the council meeting wouldn't involve much more than regular business, like the health department or roads, for example. Instead, 16 mayors endorsed a resolution declaring the Pontiac intends to stay a part of Canada, regardless of the outcome of any referendum. CHRO's Elizabeth Davis was there.
I now move to rescind my Canadian status motion to be replaced by a Canadian status declaration.
A declaration designed to ensure the Pontiac and its residents are always a part of Canada. More than half of county councils signed that declaration, sending a strong and united message.
We are saying, if you want to separate from Canada, so be it. But we as a territory, we as a distinct territory and defined territory under our Constitution are not going to go with you.
The declaration was more than many here had hoped for. They came from all across the Pontiac to find out just how far council was willing to go.
They stood up when their other partners wouldn't.
But there was also disappointment. The separatists were here as well. They were disgusted with the end result.
I have a right to vote. Everybody has a right to vote. To declare things like they've done tonight, it's what I say, it's not even democratic.
He's not alone. There were 4 members of County Council who did not put their names on the declaration.
It's not part of our mandate.
But with the declaration signed, it's now off to the National Assembly and Parliament Hill. And a petition will soon be making its way through the Pontiac looking for support for the declaration. And it's just the beginning.
Today, we can feel proud of what we have accomplished.
Elizabeth Davis, CHRO News.
It's day 2 of partition. They met last night to declare that no matter what happens in any future referendum, they're staying in Canada. Newsday's June Chua was there.
16 mayors signed the official declaration.
Who are we? We are Canadians. We are united under one Canada, indivisible.
The mayors here felt that they had to send a message.
We want to be Pontiacers, we want to be Quebecers, and we want to be Canadians. That's what we're telling our Prime Minister.
4 mayors decided not to sign, which upset some of their constituents.
The people did want you to pass this resolution or this declaration. I don't understand why you didn't pass it.
Our council felt that we shouldn't pass it.
And that started a debate amongst the onlookers.
And there's all kinds of French who are voting no. It's not French against English, and we want to get that straight. There's no reason for that. We've been getting along with French all our life. Who started?
You're going to see.
And outside the meeting room, the man who got the ball rolling was clear about what the declaration means.
They can have as many referendums if they want. It doesn't matter to us anymore because we're speaking as a territory.
Is this in effect partitioning?
You can call it what you may. But Quebec is going to make the first partition. We will make the second one.
June Chua, CBC News, Campbell's Bay, Quebec.
About 24 Quebecers, most of them also from other parts of the province, have joined us in the studio to discuss here on Newswatch tonight the issue of partition, and we're going to get right to the discussion and right to the issue. With you, if we may, Graham Smith, you're from the West Island of Montreal. What makes you feel that you have to talk about the issue of partition now?
I think it's the answer. I think it gives the separatists what they want. They can have their own country, and it gives us federalists what we want, the opportunity to remain Canadians and remain proud and loyal Canadians.
Was it you that said, yes, this is for me?
When Lucien Bouchard announced that he was going to run for the Parti Québécois leadership, I knew that separation of Quebec was then inevitable and that I had to do something in order to preserve my Canadian citizenship.
And Ross Murray, when you hear that kind of talk about partition, what makes you say, what makes you feel that partition is not what I want to talk about?
I think it's a defeatist attitude right now. We're just months after the referendum. It's still too early. The offers are being made right now. It's time for discussion. It's not time for the dialogue.
But what about you? What makes you feel that way?
I'm not from Quebec. I want to be part of it. I want to live in Quebec. I want to live in a Quebec that is a part of Canada. I don't want to be in some hated country. This is an attitude, this partition attitude is isolationist. I don't want to be isolated in my own little pocket of the eastern townships.
Debbie Johnston, when you hear yourself talking about partition, do you feel yourself as isolationist? What makes you want to talk about it now?
I think it's important that we address the issue of partition now so that we lay all cards on the table. I don't view it as being defeatist. I view it as a last resort. In that respect, I would differ from Graham. I think that we have to focus primarily on keeping the country together. Canada is a miracle. It's a beautiful union of different cultures. But what
appeals to you, the idea of partition? What is it that appeals to you, Debbie Johnston?
Oh, well, I'm passionate Canadian, and the thought of being a part of Canada is just not an issue for me. And at the same time, I love Montreal and Quebec, and I don't view myself as being part of an ethnocentric, separate Quebec.
Randall, when you hear people talking about partition, what do you think, what do you feel when you say, wait a minute, is this for me?
I think partition clears up very traumatic notions for a person like me, because I come from the Indian subcontinent. Although I came 25 years ago, it still has this sense of forced exile, migration, and all these possibilities exist. So I still feel that there's a ludicrousness to the idea, and ludicrousness begets ludicrousness. And when as a former ambassador of Canada to France, he said this country is not a real country and it's divisible. He injected the theater of the absurd, and so that's what's happening right now.
Now, Aaron McElroy, I don't think you, when you heard the word ludicrous, you were shaking your head. Are you supporting a ludicrous idea, the idea of partition?
I'll tell you the truth. You have to begin from a premise. The premise is that we're going to go by the rule of law. Now, the rule of law says that Canada is indivisible. We've allowed the Parti Québécois to give us, to go through two referendums. The answer has been, if they decide to play by the rule of law, they should have a referendum. At this point, we have to stand up and say, well, you know, maybe we didn't look at the rules of the game, but we have to set forward, we have to set the rules now.
But for you, what about you? What appeals to you about the idea of partition?
It's because it's like a mirror to the separatists. Because the separatists are saying to us, well, we can separate from Canada notwithstanding the rules. So I'm saying the same, hey, if you say you can separate from Canada notwithstanding the rules, then I don't have to follow your rules. I could remain Canadian, and why don't I separate too? And it kind of throws the issue back, and it's difficult to argue. And perhaps when Quebecers will realize, because I don't want partition, we have a lot of people don't want partition. We petition if necessary, but not necessary.
Obviously, research, I know on which side most of the people tonight are falling. I know, Helen Law, that you have listed you're against the idea. What is it that makes you not want the partition, not reach for it as the solution?
See it as that's how some people feel about partition. But for me, I feel that where do we draw the line? I mean, you can start dividing Montreal, but then do you divide by the streets? Do you divide by your neighbors? I mean, there are people in Montreal that voted yes. And
William Tillowans? Can we divide? Can we have partition? What is it appealing? What appeals to you?
I think we can partition, but I believe myself it's important now to do it now because we see this migration out of Quebec, and if we leave the issue till perhaps a day when there will be a mandate to separate
Quebec, it might be too late. And my interest as a Canadian, so I'm completely for partitioning this.
What is it about a partition that appeals to you that says, yes, it can happen for me?
I believe other Canadians in Montreal who stay, and for me what that says is there are others like me who want Canadian, be a Canadian citizen, part of the most peaceful country in the world, and I want to guarantee my rights also. Canadian citizenship gives me. And
partition appeal you, Christine Shannon, to guarantee your Canadian citizenship? What do you say when you hear that from William?
Well, I'm not a partitionist. I think most importantly, partitionists are letting Mr. Bouchard dictate the rules of the game. I don't tend to abide by his rules. I don't agree with them. And I find him essentially rather destructive.
Edina Bain, you don't agree with that. I see you shaking your head.
Well, you know, one of the things that, first of all, I need to say is that I don't label myself under one of the ISE or the isms of the 90s. But I believe that this debate, and I'm involved in this discussion because it has come. The discussion is taking place. You know, and I think we really need to look at not whether or not practical.
What do you feel about it?
I feel it may not, it not be the quality or practicality of it, but I don't even look at it in terms of geographic sense. I look at it that there are partitions anyway, ample relationships, the way in which things are structured. I believe that there are partitions there anyway. I believe we have to debate at this level that this is what what I'm looking at when I talk about partitioning, because it's there.
I'm not really sure I understand what you're saying.
Because you see, when we bring the discussion to talking about geographic boundaries and whether it's going to be by streets and what's going to be the borders and who's going to be, collecting the tolls, then we can see that it's something that we probably could never begin to sort out. But if we look at the partitioning in the minds of the people, I'm saying that the debate we really have is about unity. This is where I want to remain.
Well, Philippe Giselle, the idea seems to be saying that we are already partitioned. What do you say?
Well, I think if we go back to the night of the referendum, it is clear that a lot of people are for partition, are for the separation of Quebec, and a lot are not.
Or at least voted yes on that question.
Voted yes on that question. And it is also clear that those that are in favor of separation have for all the creation of a unilingual French country, where the most of the values of that would be built on, I would think.
But what do you think?
Yeah, but hang on. I'm coming to the reasons why I feel partition would be important. Now, if the separatists wish to create a unilingual country, which people would not fit in there, it is obvious that those that did not fit into the French, white, Catholic, French-speaking European style, which is purely ethnocentric.
You've got to get to the point. Philippe France-Mariage wants to talk about that. When you hear talk like about partition on some kind of a mental or physical or geographic basis.
Somewhere it's difficult to talk because I'm francophone, and I say to myself, Maple Leafs in my heart. I'm Canadian and I'm proud to be. But I also have the Quebec territory in my heart. I'm francophone and I'm proud to be. And what does a partition theory tell me? It tells me chaos. What does it tell me? It tells me violence. It scares me. I live in the West Island, and I look at it and I say, geez, was the message of October 30th understood? If we accept democracy to 50.5% on the no side, then somewhere democracy has to go both ways. And I want to hear that we understood.
Why do we have to go with you? Why can't you have your own country?
Well,
let us remain Canadians.
Look, there's a poll in Gaspé that voted 100% for the no. Are you going to go get them too? Are you going to go, okay, this poll in Gaspé is going to stay Canadian?
Democratic? Is that democracy to you?
It's the question. Pina Mancuso up there?
One point that he made, he said the no side, 55 or 50 points, the no side. But the democratic process didn't stop there. Why didn't it stop there? It was a democratic. The people voted. Why didn't it stop? Why are we having another referendum or the threat of it?
And what makes you think that partition would be viable if there were another?
Well, what is the other option? Or are we going to live like this indefinitely with this constant threat?
Christine Shannon, what's the other option?
You have to show a much more attractive vision of Canada. Feds absolutely failed it.
Exactly.
Completely.
That was before the referendum. That was the attitude of the federal and the provincials to show a better Canada, and the result. The question that what people are seeking now is no longer Canada's great Canada's stability. The fact that after the matter, it's not democratic. Democracy having a referendum. We'll be filming people stepping over a Quebec flag and having a referendum. Then they'll win.
Christian Rowe, is partition for you a way to find stability?
I think so. I think it's bring chaos. As Frank was saying, my belief is if this discussion happens right now is because there's nothing on the table. I think people are talking about partitioning right now because there's nothing on the table. We had the best results we can expect out of that referendum. We had a chance to talk and sit all together and find out a way to make that country work. And right now we're talking about things that I believe practically will happen. So we debate about legally speaking if it's feasible or not, and it's going to make lawyers very rich, I believe, for the next 5 years.
Did you say liars or lawyers?
Lawyers, sorry. And liars also, I believe, because that I believe from both sides. I don't think that you can you listen to both sides.
But David Marlowe used to think that it is to talk about partition and plan for it. How can you this is viable?
I don't frankly believe that. I'm not sure we have no notion. I don't
like talk about it. You're promoting the idea.
No, I'm promoting the idea.
You're discussing the idea.
I'm discussing the idea. I don't think personally that what we're talking about here, frankly, is partition. I think partition is perhaps what we're talking about. What has happened post the referendum? What's happened today, and that is the people are finally particularly the Federalists, small like us, finally saying, ça suffit, that is enough. We have not heard before now what we feel about it because we've waited for other people to do something about it.
Louise Clotilde, up there in the road, then I wonder if that's what you think you're hearing from the people who perhaps are being labeled as partitionists and they're objecting they aren't. What are you hearing?
I agree with Christine, and I think this is not an issue. I think, first, it's not the time to speak about it. We had a big shock. Everybody had a big shock after the referendum. We thought we would win highly, and the Quebecers thought, the separatists thought. So it was a shock. So now we are in a state of shock. It's not a moment to threaten people.
We are discussing the question of partition here on tonight, and we're going to continue after the break to discuss the consequences of this discussion, both the immediate ones and the long term, and perhaps the alternative, as this discussion of the question of partition continues after this break.
Egg farmer, Southern Alberta. I think eggs are just the greatest. I'm a third-generation eggman. They can be used so many ways.
Poached. Very good, quick food.
Pickled eggs.
Something up on the road.
Omelette.
Got to be one of the most versatile food products there is.
Fried eggs. Is that one?
I wouldn't get them, preferably cooked. Sorry.
Shuttle time and the flying is easy.
Canadian Airlines proudly introduces the Canadian Shuttle.
Stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down, get out of town.
74 flights exist now, more than ever before. 41 between Toronto and Montreal, 33 between Toronto and Ottawa. Call Canadian or your travel agent now. Canadian. Now you're flying.
Oxygen brings your skin to life. Introducing new Astor Laboratories in today. The Super Moisturizer made your oxygen. Oxygen that can make your skin so healthy, so vibrant, so full of life. It feels brand new. That has no age limits. Try new Astor Laboratories Integrite. Skincare with pure oxygen.
First, we'll go to the gas spade to show Peter and Jillian. Then we get Grandma in Magog. All right!
The 1996 Chrysler Intrepid, now only $349 a month. At this price, you'll want to show everyone. A powerful engine, great handling, a spacious and comfortable interior, and much more.
Hey, aren't the Murphys in Florida?
Gotta try out that air conditioning some?
Yay!
Only at your local Chrysler dealer.
The issue tonight at this forum, as it has been for many, especially non-francophones, since the close result on the referendum, the question of partition. Our audience, our group tonight is discussing this with us. They're from all over the province of Quebec and from all over Montreal. Antoinette Tadeo, I know before the break you wanted to get insight. Since the question of partition came up, what has it done to your life? What effect has it had on your life?
This partition is already a reality in Quebec. Ideologically, you got ne touchez pas à la loi 101 versus ne touchez pas à notre pays, le Canada. And partitions go far beyond boundaries, territories, and borders. Go to the very heart and soul of men and women. The partition already exists in Quebec is cultural, it's social, it's spiritual, and it's emotional.
But we're not talking about the geographical partition.
Yes, but I'd like to make my
beyond those solitudes,
Just,
what will that do?
Well, I'd like to conclude with an example that also gives my position on partition. I think I speak for many Federalists when I say the following. Pick up on what someone said, the burden of proof in the peaking. When we hear national anthem played at the Olympic Stadium, Can we Francophones stand up with respect for the national anthem of a country for which their own grandfathers gave their lives? And when we are invited to carry our Canadian flag next to our neighbors' Quebec and Jean-Baptiste parade, then we will be against partition.
But what effect has it had on your life to discuss it, to think that people are talking about it? What consequences has it had?
Well, I feel that, it has to be settled sooner. The issue of unity has to be settled soon. Bouchard has to dialogue with Federalist Quebecers, not with Anglophones.
Gina Bento, what effect has it had on your life? What are you feeling as people are talking about partition?
Well, in the beginning, I was for partition because I guess I felt like the ultimate answer for me to be able to stay within Canada but still live in my own home and be inside my own neighborhood. But looking back at history, such as Ireland or such as Korea or Vietnam, I've seen that partition has never worked. It always has led to war. And unfortunately, I don't want this to happen in Canada or Quebec.
Well, what was it gave you those second thoughts, made you pull back? Was there one thing that you heard or saw?
Well, basically, what really made me pull back is because I found it to be a very irrational, irrational solution to advocate. I mean, if the Federalists don't have any other better solutions to offer, I think it's totally useless for us to speak about partition. I mean, we should first and foremost be talking about how to unify these two different cultures, just like someone else said.
The issue is, though, we're trying to talk about unity, but you see, we're not letting the debate happen. We're trying to talk about unity, and I think that talking about sovereignty for Quebec on a macro level, that separation from Canada, why can't we see partitioning as a micro reflection of that greater picture?
The partitionists are the Parti Québécois. They
Correct.
want to partition Quebec from Canada. And if they want that, then we want separation from Quebec.
What effect have you seen all the talk of partition or the question of it or bringing it up?
Divisions within family, within your friends, within neighbors.
We already...
But we're losing our focus about the whole issue community, trying to work something together.
Aaron McCoy bringing the issues into focus. What has come into focus?
This time we're realizing, you see, the problem is people have thought they've been led by the politicians wrongly, and the Federalists have sat by and said, this whole thing is legal, go ahead, the 51%, it's a done deal. With partition, people are saying, you know what, look at the hell we're going through. I'm not for partition.
And what about the politicians? How are they reacting to this talk? What are the immediate effects?
The immediate effects recently, as we see all of a sudden for the first time, Daniel Johnson comes out and says, well, yeah, it's going to bring up a lot of problems. Well, let's discuss the problems, so maybe it'll make people change their mind. The same thing with Chrétien, same thing with Dion.
Edward Hagopian?
Okay, well, I think the question is, does Canada need a connection between its east and its west? If you're looking at just a geographical belt,
you're bringing up a whole new issue then. How much are we going to partition?
You don't need it. If Canadians are Canadians, they don't need it. But if Quebec wants to leave, it should leave with what it came in with in 1867.
I think this whole idea of partition is just a red herring. I think it's something the federal government, through his minister, Dion there, put this out like a trial balloon.
But it was out there before, was it not?
Yeah. And it avoids the real issue. That is whether Quebec is a nation and whether it has the right to determination.
Graham Smith,
you can't divide Canada.
Partition's an insurance policy. Because you have house insurance doesn't mean you don't all of a sudden sit down and decide that you're not fire in your house anymore. You have partition as a backup plan in case Quebec becomes a sovereign nation or people that don't want to go. And people who say that we're stopping our efforts to keep Canada together are wrong. I don't want to particularly want it as Plan B.
Yuri Agrawal, Plan B. Your view, Yuri Agrawal, is a Plan B. Is a Plan B, Yuri Agrawal. This is your answer. What do you think of this idea?
I'm a sovereigntist. I believe in Quebec. Go for it, Yuri.
In my opinion, I think that partition is just a way almost of bringing Keens and backers and nationalist Quebec closer together.
We've shown them what it feels like for people in your own country, for people in your province who want
want to take part of it away from you. So now they understand how Federalists in Quebec feel. I think that they...
How much understanding has really been? Philip Preville, much understanding has been really... Sorry, let me go to Richard Wills from the Ottawa Valley, Pontiac County. How much understanding do you think there has been provoked by the idea of partition?
Well, oddly enough, I think it has. This whole exercise, in a way, had the ironic effect, I think, of nationalists, sovereigntists, and federalists to know one another better. The long-term best case scenario may be that ultimately we'll come to understand one another's needs.
Now that would be contradictory if partition could lead to understanding and perhaps not sovereignty. Paul McGoldrick, what have you seen happening because of it?
Well, I think to put a positive spin on the whole issue of partition, what it's done is it's forced Canadians to discuss, to become politically involved, and also just I think they're finally voicing their disapproval of the way that politicians have been behaving, the inflammatory rhetoric, and also the media that the printed word and.
Okay, Philip Preville here, down here. What are the alternatives then? If we can get people listening to each other with the idea of partition, where
I don't think partition does help each other. We're listening to people saying that it offers a mirror to the separatists. That there's a lot of tit-tat going on here. You know, I heard partition. Lucien Bouchard got under the head of kid. I'm going to hold a gun that Lucien Bouchard partition. We've all got guns pointed at each other's heads. If we get up...
Carrier, when you hear that it's not going to end well if we keep it up.
I don't agree with partition either. I think it's a method of retaliation to say, Canada divisible with Quebec. I think that they really want to say, they want to give the Canadians same kind of scare.
So
Quebecers.
There alternative then?
I think there is an alternative. I think that the partition is really the end. Like Grant said before, is a last resort.
But I think partition has its sovereignty within Canada. It already has. It has.
All I heard this evening is that partition is Plan B, and if the proposed Plan B is a disaster, if somehow partition has emerged out in the last referendum, the federal camp did not play hardball. So this is a time to play hardball. I think that notion is fundamentally incorrect.
It's not a political strategy. What is it then, Ranabos? That's the way.
Well, there are a lot of things that have not been gone into.
You have not talked. People have not. Hold on. Can I just say one thing? Frank, say one thing. You say we haven't.
People say, okay, we are partitioned. Okay, and say, okay, let's partition. We're already partitions. Why don't we put our pants on and talk to each other and say, listen, you want this society? You want this? Why do you think that? We're not.
Tina Mancuso says people don't want to listen. Tina Mancuso says people don't want to listen.
There's listening. Bouchard says all he has to do is talk as an equal partner. He doesn't want to be the premier of the province of Quebec. What are rights of people?
Debbie Johnson, have we got there? Do you think partition is getting people attention?
Sure.
Debbie Johnson?
I think it is getting it necessarily in the right way. I think in timing it's important that we recognize this is the time to discuss the issue of partition because we're going to have a referendum in all likelihood in a year or two, and better to discuss the negative aspects of Canadian unity or disunity now rather than just before the referendum.
But how much of a risk would that be? How much risk of provoking a backlash would there be to that? Will?
Well, how much risk in not discussing it? We talk about the possible backlash with segments of Quebec if they were partitioned. But we live where there'd be an extreme backlash if Quebec were to separate. Now we're started, and we're partitioning down the middle of the Ottawa River. I can show you some very happy Federalists where
the reality for visible minority community, for example, and I'm from a very visible minority. When Bouchard begins to have secret meetings with members of the Anglophone community, when they look down the line to separate English-speaking blacks from French-speaking blacks, trying to get the soft vote and all that type of thing.
That frightens you.
Exactly, and just when I think I'm important, because on referendum night he speaks about the ethnic and the
issue of partition is the one I discussed tonight. Now, discussion is going to continue. Thank you for joining us here this evening, and thank you
to our forum members for being here with us to discuss the question of partition. Good night.
This is the Canadian Broadcasting.
Good evening. They are not waiting around for the next referendum. The sovereignty issue was front and center today in the Pontiac. A petition with more than 1,500 signatures is now in the hands of Pontiac-Gatineau-Labelle MP Robert Bertrand. As CHRO's Elizabeth Davis reports, the petition asks the federal government to take the necessary steps to ensure the Pontiac always remains in Canada.
Good to see you. Nice to see you. They call themselves Pontiac for Canada. They've come to Parliament Hill to personally deliver a petition to their MP. They don't want to see Quebec separate, but if it does, they don't want any part of it.
I want my feelings also to be respected, and the only way to have anybody know exactly what they are is to make a formal request to Parliament to protect our territories.
The petition, signed by Colette Blaine and 1,500 other Pontiac residents, asks the federal government to do whatever it takes to keep them in Canada.
In other words, we're putting the onus, the responsibility on Ottawa to deal on our behalf with Quebec.
Paul Hinch is responsible for getting the petition started and putting it in the hands of Pontiac-Gatineau-Labelle MP Robert Bertrand.
It's going to show Mr. Chrétien that people in my riding are extremely concerned and that we should be getting on with trying to find a solution to this.
Bertrand plans to present the petition in the House of Commons next week. As for Pontiac for Canada, this is just the beginning. Its next move is to join other Federalists for this weekend's Unity Rally on Parliament Hill. Elizabeth Davis, CHRO News.
More people are on welfare in Ontario.
Canadian, even if Quebec separates. A major rally on Parliament Hill is planned this weekend. A lengthy petition was delivered today. Newsline's Norman Fetterly was there.
The Pontiac is cottage country for the capital. English-speaking families here have roots generations deep, and they want the Pontiac to remain a part of Canada even if Quebec separates. 1,500 people signed a petition asking that the Pontiac be administered as a federal territory if Quebec separates.
Well, our biggest fear is that let's say the more radical voices on either side may come to the forefront and lead to violence.
Jean Chrétien has played down talk of partitioning a separate Quebec, but Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Sandy Dion said rights of those who want to remain Canadian must be considered. Pontiac MP Bob Bertrand hopes it comes to that.
I am convinced that the provincial governments, the Bouchard government, the federal government will find a way to resolve this thing once and for all and can finally put it a back burner.
That still doesn't answer Ken Pasher's questions about what happens if Quebec goes, the Pontiac with it.
They may take more of our rights as Canadian citizens, English-speaking Canadian. They may go a little bit stronger about forcing the bilingual laws and everything else, which I think are a little bit now.
This weekend, people in the Pontiac stepped the pressure on the federal government with a 100-kilometer march. The Love Canada Marathon, as it's called, hopes to draw about 5,000 people with an essay that even though Quebec may separate, they'll remain Canadian. Norman Fetterly, CJOH News.
An Ottawa MP will launch a legal defense fund for those facing charges stemming from last fall's Montreal Unity Rally. Mauro Boulanger, a Liberal MP who helped organize the rally, will head up the campaign. 3 people in the capital have been charged so far. They all rented buses to take demonstrators to Montreal. A senior bureaucrat.
Les résidents du Pontiac veulent obtenir l'assurance que leur citoyenneté, de même que leur territoire, seront protégés advenant un Québec souverain.
Nous, on est bien ici, on veut rester ici et on demande qu'on nous protège nos droits. C'est aussi simple que ça. Si on ne fait pas de demande formelle, on peut pas espérer d'avoir une action favorable plus tard.
Et ces militants font partie de quelques 5000 manifestants du Pontiac, de Montréal et de Toronto qui sont attendus à la colline du Parlement dimanche pour manifester leur appartenance au Canada. Le ministère québécois du Revenu est de plus en plus dur avec les citoyens.
Separates. The small group of protesters was part of a larger group that will hold a rally on Sunday. The demonstrators presented a petition bearing 1,500 names to MP Robert Bertrand. It asked that the Pontiac region be administered as a federal territory if Quebec separates. Pregnant women in Ontario.
À la mi-course, 2 coureurs se détachaient du peloton, soit Patrick Billette, champion
was there.
Depending on whose estimate you believe, there are anywhere from 7,000 to 15,000 people here on Parliament Hill's front lawn. Whatever the number, there are more people here than the organizers ever predicted.
We fear for Quebec, and we fear for Canada.
They were here to declare their love of Canada as it is now and their contempt for the separatists would break up the country.
For too long we have been silent. For too long we have listened to the gospel of separatism according to Saint Lucien.
Le Canada, c'est notre pays, et le Québec, c'est notre chez nous.
This rally was put together by people from Pontiac County. It's the westmost and largely Anglophone part of the province, and today they led the Federalist Parade from their towns along the Ottawa River to the nation's capital. They were greeted along the way by people like Peter and Chris Ozinga, who worry that Ottawa River may become more than a provincial boundary.
Quebec is a part of Canada. It should stay that way. Definitely.
I know we're on the Quebec side, and I love Quebec very much, and I want to stay here.
The parade of flags from Pontiac County made a dramatic entrance, but waiting for them, thousands of people from other places. At 35 busloads of people came from Montreal area.
To support Faye and all the other unity groups who are working so hard to keep this country together.
The support from all over was a big reward for Faye Stafford, who with a friend started organizing this months ago.
When we started this, we thought we were going to just be the people from the county of Pontiac. We have people, it's unbelievable. We've got Winnipeg here and Thompson, Manitoba, and Deep River and Sudbury and Prescott, Ontario. It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
This rally was intended as a show of strength and unity. Many here to rally again on July 1st in Montreal. There they hope to recapture some of the mood of last year's referendum rally. Shopton CT News, Ottawa.
It's on freedom today during a boisterous rally on Parliament Hill. The grassroots rally began in the Pontiac region of Quebec, and the demonstrators drove or marched across the bridge to Ottawa.
Canada! Today is the beginning of the end of separatism.
The crowd demanded tough government action on unity and diplomat, declaring that Canada is indivisible. Prime Minister of France.
After years of watching the separatist movement grow, Anglophones and other Federalist Quebecers have decided it's time to fight back. They point out they're the ones who have won 2 referendums, and it's time Quebec's separatist movement respect these votes.
He claims we must not frustrate the aspirations of the Quebec sovereigntists. What about the aspirations of the people in Quebec who voted no?
Howard Galgan is a Montrealer who organized this rally. He says Federalists have become a kind of oppressed majority in Quebec.
No more adults, it's over. No more threats, it's over. The intimidation ends today, it's over.
There were lots of fighting words at this rally. The crowd was told to demand English signs, launch boycotts if necessary, even defy the language police.
Separation has consequences. Racism has consequences. Let them start paying the price.
The close call of the last referendum seems to have awakened many Quebec Federalists. They now open talk of partition, boycotts, and defying Quebec's language laws. And today's rally was meant to show they have found their political voice, and they will fight to keep Quebec in Canada. Jean Perbeau, Global News, Ottawa.
Night with Steve Rinn. Good evening. If you were anywhere near Parliament Hill, I thought it was Canada Day. Estimates vary, but 6,000 to 10,000 gathered for an emotional demonstration of national unity. And as Nightline's Ron McMichael reports, there's a very clear message for Prime Minister Chrétien.
It's a message that traveled hundreds of kilometers from deep in West Quebec, a plea for unity, a pledge for the Pontiac to stay Canadian, no matter what.
It's a great way to show people how much we care about this country.
Thanks. Eldon Keon picked up the torch in Aylmer, helping to carry it across the bridge that joins Quebec and Ontario, onto flag-waving crowds on Parliament Hill.
Canada! Today is the beginning of the end of separatism.
More than 6,000 people, mostly Anglophones, joined in an emotional plea for solidarity. From Allumette Island to Montreal and many places in between, they came to show their love for Quebec and for Canada.
Canada's indivisible, and we hope by this demonstration we can show to the world, not just Canada, that we are Canadians in Montreal, in Quebec, that want to stay part of Canada.
The grassroots people will save not only Canada, but also Quebec. We won't let go, we won't back down.
Many at the rally are ready to partition Quebec if it means staying in Canada. Most are hoping it won't come to that.
I believe we will win. If there is another referendum, Quebec will be within Canada.
Another unity rally wraps up, but thousands of people will leave here with a lingering hope that the momentum will build from here, keeping the unity drive alive. Rhonda McMichael, CJOH News.
The Harris government's advisory panel